Okay, welcome everyone to this seminar at Care Answered, Combating Isolation, Staving Off the Pandemic of Loneliness. We know this is a big issue. We're specifically concerned about it near the holiday season and as we have less daylight because it's fall going into winter. But there are ways to combat it. So we're going to discuss those too. My name is Nicole Christensen. I'm the CEO of Care Answered. I am a board certified patient advocate and the author of the book From Crisis to Calm, a patient advocate's take on healthcare coordination for you, the common caregiver. So we're going to talk about different effects of isolation and loneliness. And with us, we have Jen Faith Brown, who is a singer and actor and a registered drama therapist, as well as the executive director of Lightkeeper Productions. And she's going to talk to us about different methods that drama therapy can have and actually work with us on an exercise that we can use. And then Adam Flatow, who is a certified senior authority. No, he's the owner
advisor.
of senior. Thank you, advisor. I'm like, that's not right. See, certified senior advisor and the owner of Senior Care Authority, Long Island, and he's going to talk to us about different methods that are being used in assisted livings and other facilities that cater to seniors, what they're doing to combat this isolation and potential loneliness. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. And you can always ask questions in the chat. And after each one of us speak, if you have questions there, then we'll save some time there as well. Okay, so staving off the pandemic of loneliness. This is something that I heard, a phrase I heard recently that goes with, of course, COVID crisis and the pandemic. But the loneliness is just as jarring, upsetting, and unfortunately causes many deaths. And so it's a very, very important thing that should not be overlooked. Unfortunately, I've had people that reached out to me that said, you know, my loved one wasn't killed from COVID, but they were kind of killed from COVID because of broken hearts and not being able to see people and not being able to be in the routine of their lives and not being able to deal with that well. And it affects our psychological health, our emotional health, our physical health, our mental health. So let's talk about that a little bit because I'm sure it's affecting each and every one of us and every person on this planet at this point. So again, the topics that we're going to cover are the effects of loneliness and isolation and tips for healthy socialization at home and away from home. I'm going to start with the definition of loneliness and social isolation. So it's defined as feeling lonely more than once a week. So that's loneliness. And loneliness causes people to feel empty, alone, and unwanted. Social isolation is a lack of social connections. Social isolation can lead to loneliness in some people, while others can feel lonely without being socially isolated. We've heard this before. I'm sure all of us have had that instance of someone we love or ourselves even being surrounded by people, but somehow feeling not connected, feeling lonely. People who are lonely have a 64% increased risk of dementia and a 26% increase of premature death. And pre-pandemic, 43% of adults over 59 years old report significant loneliness. This is pre-pandemic. So in and itself, it was a pandemic before there was any COVID. Isolation and loneliness can lead to increased risk of the things that we mentioned, as well as increased pain, increased risk for pneumonia, heart disease, and stroke. It exacerbates previous medical issues. It can put you at risk of developing cognitive decline, at risk for substance abuse, anxiety, insomnia, stress, and even suicide. So what are some signs that we can look to better understand, so that we can help our loved ones or recognize it within ourselves? Signs of loneliness and isolation will be deep boredom, like really just can't think of anything to do that would bring any kind of happiness. Losing interest in personal hygiene, not dressing anymore, not taking care, washing their hair, not washing their face, not getting out of pajamas, wearing the same clothes over and over again. Poor eating habits, right? So there's a joke with this pandemic, right? It's like the COVID-19, like the freshman 15 pounds. We're not eating as nutritiously as we should, perhaps. But when this goes on and on, this is a problem, whether that poor eating habits is eating a lot of unhealthy foods and a lot of food or not eating. Both of those could be indications or signs of loneliness in this isolation. And the other is that one's home is in significant disrepair. So things are broken, a hoarding issue, trash issue, not taking care of things the way they usually would, not cleaning up after themselves, just not having the desire to clean up after themselves, do any dishes, do anything like that. And the thing about these signs of loneliness is in isolation, sometimes we don't see these things, right? Because we're not seeing somebody's home as much, or we're not seeing their body to know that they've been wearing the same clothes, or haven't brushed their teeth and those kinds of things. So it makes it a little harder for loved ones to find these things out. What I recommend, and what my friends who are psychologists and in the mental health field have suggested, is asking those questions, right? You have to ask the questions to get the answers, because it's not as easy to see as it would be as if you could stop by and see them all the time. Okay, so now here comes the good stuff. Tips to combat isolation, okay, and this loneliness that we're seeing. So one is routine. Whatever one's routine is or was pre-pandemic, as much as we can, let's stick to that. We get up, maybe we take a shower, we wash our hair, we brush our teeth, we get dressed. All of those routines that we took for granted before, if we can keep those going, it uplifts us. It's a schedule and a routine, and we as humans, we thrive on routine. I have children, and anybody who's had children has heard, routine, routine, routine. Well, I guess that makes us adults that also need that. But it's that routine is so important for our mental and physical health. It just keeps us knowing, like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing at this time of the day, and it keeps it more ordinary. Then there's music. Well, music, I think, is just wonderful for the body, spirit, mind, everything. And it can play a real crucial role when you don't feel good, right? I don't know about you, but we'll have little dance parties in my house when somebody's down or just a good song comes on. Put on music that you either relate to or gets you moving or makes you happy or brings great memories. Put that music on, even if you don't consider yourself a lover of music. You'd be surprised if you put on that song that they played when you were in high school for your first love, how it will make you feel. So try to have music in your daily life, in the routine, and encourage your loved ones to do the same. Now, there's also mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness and meditation is something new to me. I'm a more recent convert, but it really does help. And, don't take my word for it. There's hundreds and millions of people that learned about it way before me, that are utilizing it to keep themselves where they are, to slow things down and to recognize potentially gratitude for what we do have, whatever that is. Also, nutrition, exercise, monitoring sleep. We talked a little bit about poor eating habits as a sign of loneliness and isolation. But keeping up your nutrition as best you can and moving your body. Exercise doesn't mean, going to a gym. It doesn't mean running a marathon. It means whatever is going to get your body moving, whatever that is for you. If it's chair yoga, if it's taking a walk around the block, if it's taking a walk around your apartment, whatever it is, lifting, cans of soup, whatever it is, keep moving. As my grandmother used to say, who lived to 104, if you don't move it, you lose it. And that it doesn't mean only your physical capabilities, but I think it affects people mentally as well. So try to keep moving. Set times for activities. This goes into a little bit like routine, but if you want to set a time for when you watch your favorite show, because now we don't have to wait till it just comes on, right? We can DVR it or whatever, live stream it or what have you. Set a time so that you have that thing to look forward to. Set a time when you're going to talk to your friends or family, or set a time that somebody's going to call you, or you're going to FaceTime or Zoom or anything like that. Set those times because those are those little things that are now part of your new routine that you can have happen. Even if it's playing solitaire, any of those things, just set times for it so that it can become your new routine. Dressing up, right? So we often joke in this new way that we live that we kind of only dress from this top up, right? And I'm wearing pajamas on the bottom. Whatever, but that's okay. Whatever you want to do, but dress up, do your hair, just dress up for no reason at all. You're not going anywhere, or you are seeing somebody via Zoom. You take that little effort, it makes you feel good. You shave that day if you're a gentleman. Whatever it is, it's just, again, more of the normal, and it'll lift your spirit. What was that thing? What was that comedian? When you look good, you feel good, and you look marvelous, right? So really, really do that for yourself. Arts and crafts, coloring, word searches. I have learned also from Jen, anytime you are within the arts, but especially when you're using your hands, it gets your mind off other things. You are in that moment, utilizing your hands to create something. And, I'm no Pablo Picasso, but you're just doing something that looks pretty at the end, or looks nice, or makes you feel good at the end. Um, Doing those kinds of things have been proven to be very helpful as well. Again, you set up, okay, I need these things for it. Let me start doing these things. And then you call and you tell people how fabulous you are because you just did something. And then calls and virtual meetings like we're having right now. So kudos to everybody. Those are so important. And, people are Zoomed out and FaceTimed out and all those kinds of things. But when you don't have access to it, or even phoned out, like there are people that were not telephone people, right? But that's the options that they have right now. And so hearing somebody you care about or who cares about you on the other end of the phone is
Cool.
so wonderful.
It
Um,
is.
so so do that. Have those calls and those virtual meetings. And on another note, keeping up with your health, right? So we have different options. If you have a health concern, or if it's time for your general checkup, those kinds of things, please continue to do those. Whether you can do it in person would be great. If you can't, utilize telehealth, find out what your clinicians are using. If you don't feel well and you're concerned, go to a doctor. Do not let this prevent you so that you don't get the care that you need on something that's completely not related to COVID or related to COVID. Either way, you don't know until you see a clinician. So please don't make this scare you or your loved ones into not taking action on your own care. Okay? Again, if you need somebody, if you're going alone and you're nervous or afraid, or you're doing a telehealth visit, or you're going into your doctor, give us a call at Care Answered. Call, and we will be there to ask the questions and advocate with you, or call a loved one. People are really wanting to help each other out through this time. You know, we're all a little bit overwhelmed, so people are afraid to ask somebody else for assistance. But do, because that's another thing that lifts one, is to be able to help somebody else. So don't take that away from somebody when you need help. Reach out and ask for it. So here's some more tips. So less news. Hopefully we've all heard this. You need less news in your life, less watching of the news. Get what you need to know and get out. No more. It's not good news for the most part. The owl was cute. Did everybody see that? And that was in the tree. That was cute. That was good news. And he took his flight. That was in the tree in Rockefeller Center. But less news is always better. Link to your houses of worship. If it's your mosque or your synagogue or your church, whatever it is, there are ways that they are reaching out and you can reach out to them. Whether you are going to a service on TV or via YouTube, or you can have somebody come and be with you. Call, see what your house of worship is offering, because they are really offering a lot. They want to reach out, that you are a community. Community programs, again, senior centers, those kind of, all sorts of community programs are still functioning, just in a different way. They have friendly callers even. So call and ask. Those same places that you used to go to, don't think that they're just shut off now, because they're not. Most of them are not. They're available to you. So reach out to them. Libraries are also doing a fantastic job getting information to people, doing webinars like this, dropping off books, all sorts of things. Museums too, arboretums, even performing arts centers. I get information from different performing arts centers all the time about what they're doing, and they're great. They have some for kids and adults and everything in between. So look into those things that are near you, or the things that you kind of before pandemic were like, I was always interested in that. Now go, and you have a little time, go look at them. They are trying to get people in. So there are things happening. Write letters, send cards. Remember those? People love to receive them, and it's cathartic writing them. It makes you feel good. So if you don't have access to a phone, if you don't have access to the internet, you know, writing those letters or filling out cards, it's the holiday season, you could write those cards, put a little bit more information in them, and write those letters, and that makes us connected as well. Also, frequent mental health assessments, also very important. If you're feeling, don't wait till you feel at your lowest point. Again, those signs, if people are telling you or you're seeing it from somebody else, make sure that a mental health assessment can be set up. Give us a call at Care Answered if you don't know how that's done, but that's something that should be done before people reach rock bottom, if you can. And if you get them done frequently, you can kind of stop the spiral or get at least some assistance before it spirals down. There are now meditation apps, right? Like Headspace and Calm that can be available on your computer, on your phone, what have you. That, you know, maybe it's 10 minutes. Some of them are free for this pandemic. Look into that. I know Kara Answered on our webpage had resources as well, and I'm going to update them. But there's definitely some meditation apps that are free currently. Kahoot. So Kahoot is something that my children told me about. Kahoot.com, Kahoot.com. And it's like, you can do games on it. So for how we first heard about it is the teachers were giving it out for kind of like a test. It would like be a multiple choice or to prep for a test. But then we were using it for virtual birthday parties. So you would say something about yourself and have 4 answers, multiple choice, and everybody's playing from all over the country to get the highest score. I suggest you take a look at it. We're going to use it in my family for Thanksgiving to bring everybody together virtually, and it's fun and easy. Another app that's like that has games already in them so you don't have to make them up is called House Party. So they have different kinds of games. You can hop on there, check that out. Maybe that's something that you can have as an activity to look forward to. And Zoom, which is the platform you're on right now, for Thanksgiving, they are generally, it's free. Zoom can be free, but there's generally a 40-minute cutoff. But for Thanksgiving, it's going to be the 40-minute limit is going to be lifted, and it's ongoing. So from midnight on the 26th through 6 a.m. on November 27th, you can be on Zoom for as long as you want, free. So take advantage of that. Don't make it just the 40 minutes unless you can't stand them for 40 minutes, but that's another story. And then virtual book clubs, those have been coming up. So check those out. Look for them. Now they can be everywhere, right? So if you're a reader and that's something that interests you, that's still available to you. You can join different virtual book clubs and go online and talk to new friends about the book. Puzzle exchange is something that my mother-in-law told me about. She lives in a senior community, and they have puzzles like 100 or 200. I guess they go up to 500 to 1,000. She says 1,000 is too many. But what they do is they all have them and they're outside, so they're kind of decontaminated when they're done with it. You know, the pieces are, and they just go outside and look at the puzzle. And if they want it, they just say, you know, Nicole Christensen, I have your puzzle. And then when they're done with it, they put it outside and people can, they all share these puzzles. They also do that with books as well. So I thought that was a really, really cool one, because puzzles, again, it's with your hands and you're thinking about it and time flies. Okay. So that is me. Does anybody have any questions or have any cool tips that they want to offer as well?
Hey, Nicole.
Yes.
One thing that I did just before the pandemic started, I had signed up for an in-person physical trainer at a Zoom at a gym.
Uh-huh.
And when the gyms closed down, he actually started doing Zoom sessions, physical training. And I wound up spending a lot more money than I wanted to, but I felt it was good being home and being kind of forced online to exercise.
Yeah.
And I really found it a great tool. I mean, I got to tell him, he said, what do you like best about this? I always said, I don't like this at all. But, but it still worked. And I wound up actually eating healthier, and I actually lost a few pounds.
Good for
And
you.
so it really worked well. So I totally agree that finding things to keep yourself busy in the house. Believe me, work wise, I'm busy as can be, but at the same time, you need to do something for yourself too, and
Absolutely.
that's what worked for me. So
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I have heard a lot of success with that. I've also seen in my community in the parks them doing, it's only three people with one personal trainer, seemingly, all socially distanced and doing it that way while we still have the weather to do it. So
yeah.
I think those kinds of things are really important. And the other thing I wanted to share also is to contact your legislator if you're having any questions, if you're trying to figure out, oh, what is this mental health testing? Or you're trying to figure out just fun activities to do within your community. They should have that information and they sometimes can be the conduit for all of this good information. So please don't hesitate to contact your local legislators about it as well. Anybody else have anything to share?
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I missed the memo about getting dressed up for these Zoom calls, so excuse my appearance. I'm in the workout gear, yet to do a workout today.
Please, that's okay. Come as you are.
Oh, well, I was on another call this morning, and it was all about, training your brain and brain fitness.
Mm,
And the speaker gave a nice little game to play that I plan to play for Thanksgiving around the table. And it was something so simple as try to have a conversation without using the letter L. And
okay.
you had to sit there. And so they did a little exercise where two people were having this conversation. And it was so funny to watch because they're sitting there going, hi, how are you? They're really thinking about the
Each
words that they're
word.
saying. He says, this is, you're, you're massaging that big muscle in your head. So I just thought it was a different kind of game to play and do it with whatever, parameters you'd like, but just a little tidbit maybe.
Yeah, that's
Thanksgiving
great.
fun.
That's great. That's great. My
But
youngest is
these
very into
websites
Wheel
are
of
great.
Fortune. It's so funny.
Mhm.
I'm like, why does he like Wheel of Fortune? But he loves it. And that's a really fun game. So yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's a
Yeah.
fun game. So he's making an appearance. Say hello. Hello.
How sweet.
um, does anybody else have any suggestions or things that are working for them? All right. So we're going to get to the next.
Nicole,
Yes.
Nicole, this is
Yes.
Olga Rule.
Hi, Olga.
Hi. Sorry, I'm in the kitchen doing something. I'm sorry. You know what? I like to dance. And
Mm,
now being homebound, I take dance classes, Zumba and belly dance on YouTube.
fun.
And it's free. It's wonderful. So those people who like to dance, that's a great opportunity.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I have there's also like Tubi that has all of these different fitness, including belly dancing, that people should take advantage of too. Again, free out there.
Yep.
All right. Jen, without further ado, let me introduce Jen Faith Brown, and she's going to walk us through some good tips as well.
Yes, so thank you so much, Nicole, for that presentation. That was phenomenal. And as Nicole mentioned, I'm a drama therapist, and basically drama therapy is just utilizing your creativity to work through whatever particular goals or challenges that you or your client is having. And I always find that one of the best ways to really explain drama therapy is just to let people experience it. And so I'm hoping everybody has some paper, just a piece of paper and a pen handy. If you have other materials around, colored pencils or crayons or anything like that, that's always useful. But all you need is a piece of paper and a pen. And this is an exercise that I love to start with, oftentimes with a first session or first group session. It's called My Favorite Place. And basically, we're all going to do this together. We're just going to, on our piece of paper, sketch out a place where we feel the most relaxed, the most at home, a place that when you're there, you just have this feeling of, and it could be a place that you remember from a long time ago. Sometimes I work with young people who say, I don't have that place, which is always hard to hear. But then I'll say, maybe a place that you imagine, that you just would feel completely at home and really relaxed, that you just feel that you're completely yourself there. So we're just going to take about 2 or 3 minutes to do this. And as Nicole mentioned earlier with music, I believe most of us are on mute. And so I'd love to just invite you, if you have your iPhone handy or you have, anything handy where you can just play some music while you're doing this. Sometimes that makes the exercise even more fun. So we'll just take a couple minutes and then we'll all come back together, and I'm going to invite somebody to share. And anyone who feels like they have come to a place that they are brave enough to share, let me know. Donald, fantastic. So much.
One of my favorite places is a room in my house, which is a den. My wife calls it a family room.
Okay.
I call it a den. I have a 75-inch screen TV, all the kind of DVDs I can watch, and I find that very relaxing. I kind of get lost in the movie or whatever I may be watching, and I really enjoy that. The other thing is a fantasy type thing where I'm on an island that has all the amenities, and including cable and internet and everything else, and not doing any work other than just hanging out and drinking a rum and coke. So,
Now, did you sketch it out?
no, I didn't sketch it out. No.
Okay, but you're describing it, which is totally fine. So so this island, what do you imagine? Where do you imagine you're sitting in this island?
Currently on a lounge chair underneath a coconut tree.
Ah, okay. And is there any wind blowing, or is there any?
Yes, there's a slight breeze keeping the heat off. So like it's Aruba with a slight constant wind breeze. That's something like that. Yes.
Awesome. So you're sitting underneath this coconut tree, and it's quite warm out, right?
Yes.
from what you, but this breeze is just kind of keeping it
Cooler.
just sort of like the perfect temperature. And as you're sitting there, I can almost, as you're describing it so vividly, right? I can almost feel how you might be breathing myself, just the way you're describing it. Is it kind of just like, can you show me how you might be breathing in this place? And as he's doing this, can we all do this together? All of us.
Well, you can't breathe much when you have a rum and Coke in your hand and
So
you have a book in the other hand, and get your breathing normally.
Just breathing normally. Okay. And if you take a sip of the rum and Coke, right? What does it feel like on your lips?
Tastes nice and cool.
Nice and cool.
Yes.
As he's describing it, can we all sort of feel the coolness? Can we feel it going down? And just through you kind of explaining this, right, we're all able to go to this place together as a group. So it's something that we can do in a session individually, but also in group work. It's twofold, this particular exercise, because it's allowing us to connect and you to go to this place again, but then it's inviting everyone who's in this Zoom call can sort of take this trip to Aruba for a minute.
I also have next to me a little ball. It's called Wilson. Nicole gets it.
Yeah.
Occasionally play some basketball.
Nice.
I had to throw that in. I'm sorry.
No worries. Do we have a minute, Nicole, for one other person to share?
I'll go.
Awesome.
All right, I'm so cheesy, but I put my boyfriend's parents' house.
Okay.
They are like just such a chill family that it's like almost weird sometimes. I mean, my parents are wonderful too, but his parents are just so wonderful. So I put us sitting on the couch drinking wine. And I did draw it. I don't want to show you because it's really bad, but now I put a Christmas tree up. All right, I'll show. Oh, I have to
Do
take
you
my
mind
virtual
showing us
background.
I can't draw to save my life, so don't even, it's not about the drawing.
We're sitting on the couch and that's the wine and the Christmas tree.
Oh, I love this. And I love the Christmas tree.
Yes.
So there's always a lot of clues in the drawing. So when you're working with the client, if you don't mind showing it one more time, because it's just going to give a lot to work with. So looking at the Christmas tree, and I see just like I love this position of the way the arms are. Can you talk about that?
Well, me and his mom, we'll hang out and we'll drink some wine and we'll we have fun. So let's leave it at that.
Yeah, but this feeling is a tremendous opportunity for movement, right? So it's like if you're working with a client and you notice something like this, right? If we're all going to do this together, this feeling, is there any expressions that are accompanying this movement?
A lot of laughing.
I love it. So it's like,
Yes, yes.
if we all just do this together, right? If we all let's all do it together. Right? I can actually come into your place through the movement and the laughter. And you've given us so beautifully this moment that you've experienced, we've all gotten to experience with you. It's like, what a gift that is. Yes.
We're a good time.
Yeah.
You
Olga.
wouldn't be disappointed.
Yes, I want to say, Kristen, your picture is beautiful. And when I looked at it, the first thought which came to my mind, looking at these two figures, love, affection, fun, friendship, and all the words of this type. Great, great.
You hit the nail on the head. That's all the words I would use to describe our relationship. So I'm glad you liked my stick figures.
And
it
also,
was,
I found there was a sense of relaxation, maybe with the arms back like this.
Yeah,
So,
yes.
thank you so much. That was awesome. Both of you really just so perfectly shared.
Rum and Coke and wine. What does that say about us, Don?
Yeah, so I hope you kind of get an idea of like how you can use this exercise with a client or a loved one, in a way that can kind of bring them back to those places where they feel connection, and then especially with the group work as well, that the entire group can connect as well.
I think that
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was really wonderful. I love the connectivity of it. And people can use that even for this upcoming holiday. Olga, I'm sorry. What were you
No,
going
I
to say?
just wanted to say that I immediately thought that it's a great, exercise or game when we have Christmas parties, birthdays, and Thanksgiving, like Nicole said. I think it's great, even with the children.
Yeah.
And comment and give the title. That's great. Thank you. Great idea.
Yeah, so you can move it on from there where you would give it a title. You can have them write a scene from there, like Kristen may write a scene between the two characters, right, sitting at the table. What are they saying to each other? You can build stories, and then you can have the client develop it into a full-on script. And that can kind of give them a jumping point for creating a whole project.
you
Which
could make it into a storyboard, and it would then be turned into a movie.
Exactly. Perfect.
Jen, I could really see it, Jen, being used with grandma or grandpa or mom or dad on a Zoom call or something along those lines, that you're, I don't want to say running out of things to say, but you're getting a sense over the course of that Zoom call that, there's a little silence, a little uncomfortable moment, or even detecting, as Nicole was saying, some of the signs of loneliness, and then just kind of bringing that in. And I could just imagine seeing the shoulders come up and a smile going on grandma's face or something. I think it's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And sometimes they may be reticent to share, and so you may say, oh, I want to show you something that I learned, and you do it yourself and allow them to experience it, or kids in the home or something like that. So
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Don and Kristen, for taking us to your place. I very much enjoyed it there. So, Adam, why don't you share with us some tips and good things that are happening in the perspective of assisted livings and other senior communities that seem to be having a good impact, and kind of tell us what's going on.
Sure, my pleasure. We're not doing any activities or anything along those lines, and probably nothing too fun, but I do want to share some information. But thank you very much for that, Jen. And of course, Nicole, thank you. And as you so eloquently put it, isolation and loneliness, bad. Togetherness, fun, socializing, activities, good. Okay. That kind of summarizes it all. And I know that during the pandemic, maintaining personal contact and doing certain activities has been very difficult. And that by no means is different in senior living communities. And initially, all senior living facilities and communities took on some rather draconian measures to kind of eradicate the virus within the walls of those specific facilities. And relative to assisted living communities, these measures worked, and now the communities know how to manage the virus, and equally as important, how to avoid resident isolation without resorting to these so-called draconian measures anymore. And by definition, assisted living is a social model of living and caring for our senior loved ones, as opposed to skilled nursing, which is a medical model. So, one of the underlying themes of all assisted living communities is therefore the socialization within the community. And every community handles this a little bit differently, but it's extremely important to every single community. I guess the one common piece to all communities is the quarantine upon admittance. And even that kind of varies from community to community. Some communities will have a 14-day quarantine upon a new resident coming in. And this is all, of course, predicated on negative COVID tests and things along those lines. But others will have shorter time, just a few days of quarantine upon moving into the community. But that quarantine is something that's going to take place in every assisted living community for a new resident. And quarantine, by the way, isn't as isolating as it sounds. It's not being locked in a room by yourself or anything like that. Even during the initial quarantine, there's still substantial contact with staff members and caregivers within the resident's apartment. There's meal delivery 3 times a day. There's care checks, and there's administering of the medication, and there's assistance with ADLs that are all going to take place and be, one-on-one or two staff members and a resident. So it's not total isolation within these quarantine periods. And also the recreation team. In most communities, the recreation team is going to go into the apartments at least twice a day to provide activities and entertain the residents. And some of the things that Nicole was showing, they're going to be doing even within the rooms, arts and crafts projects and mind games and exercise. All of that's going to happen between the resident and the caregivers and those recreation teams. And then once inside the community, the staff can kind of get rather creative as to how they'll maintain safe, and I emphasize that, safe socialization to the point of avoiding isolation and still maintaining a good camaraderie amongst the residents. With outside vendors and entertainers, access into the communities being very, very limited these days, the communities look to the staff to fill gaps. And so some of these staff members can get pretty creative. I've seen staff members become hairdressers, become manicurists and piano players and singers. And sometimes, simply just friends and confidants to talk with the residents to complement the socialization that they're going to get with the other residents as they're, meeting new people and getting to gain new friends within the community. To many residents, that religion is very important, and weekly rituals mean everything. I've seen staff members without, because there's limitations now on clergy coming into communities. I've seen staff members step up and assist with mass and sermons and conduct Shabbat prayers on Friday nights. I've seen communities set up outdoor concerts in the courtyards of the communities with the residents watching from, inside the community or inside their apartment or from their balconies. Just again, creative things just to keep the residents entertained and stave off isolation. Most communities at this stage of the game, and I'm going to preface this by saying this stage of the game, we're going through a little bit of an uptick, as everybody knows, and I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I just received in a minute. But right now, most communities have resumed some form of communal dining with proper physical distancing and staggered dining times, as well as small group activities and exercise classes and bingo and mind games within the community. And there's always exercise at least once, and most of the time, twice a day. Physical therapists are essential workers. They still come into the community and assist all of the residents that require physical therapy. Most communities have established visitation policies, both outdoors and in designated indoor areas. Some have even set up websites for the family to use that makes it very easy for the family members to go onto the assisted living communities websites and set up specific times for family visitation or for a staff member to assist in an iPad communication or a Zoom call or whatever it may be. And you know, those things are happening within the assisted living communities as a whole. And then within assisted living communities, at least within some of them, they have memory care neighborhoods. And memory care neighborhoods is a different ballgame. Quarantine and isolation amongst those with dementia have even a greater negative impact on those residents. Not to mention that it's many times even more difficult to implement a isolation program or a quarantine program within a memory care neighborhood. Most memory care neighborhoods, believe it or not, for the most part, are operating pretty much status quo, the same way that they have been even before the pandemic, with the exception, of course, of them doing their absolute best upon that initial admittance to get the COVID negative tests and do a little bit of quarantining upon that initial get-go. Some communities even allow for residents to leave for the day and family members to go, you know, with family members or friends and to go outside to doctor's appointments, even though there are doctors and therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists and podiatrists coming into the community. Some residents want to go to their own doctors outside of the communities. Some communities are allowing that without quarantine upon return. Others are saying that you can do that, but you need to go through the quarantine process when you come back in. I just received, and what I was alluding to before, excuse me, because I'm going to read it because I just received this, and I haven't really had the opportunity to absorb this yet, but I just received notice from Department of Health relative to, I guess, what's going on in our environment right now relative to upticks in COVID and of course with Thanksgiving in 2 days and the holidays around the corner. Just going to read it real quickly. This is to assisted living communities and skilled nursing facilities. Residents who leave a facility must quarantine or minimize contact to the extent safely possible prior to their return to the facility. Not a big deal. Here's where it gets a little interesting. These residents must be quarantined on transmission-based precautions upon return to the facility for 14 days. They have to test negative within 24 hours prior to returning to the facility. And they need to be tested at least 3 times during that 14-day quarantine period. So there's a lot more to that, and I really want to absorb it and figure out exactly what this means, but especially to some of the communities that have had different policies and protocols relative to their residents leaving. But you know, it's going to change, I think, quite a bit of plans that some of these families have had relative to the holidays. And it's important that anybody who is in a community, any loved one that has or any family member that has a loved one in the community, or anyone that's even thinking about going into a community gets to understand all of these different nuances that each community has, because they all are truly different, and they do go from community to community with, of course, an overlying factor of what I just read, direction and guidelines from Department of Health. And I guess the underlying takeaway from my brief words of what I'm sharing with you right now is that relative to assisted living and the residents within assisted living, they will always have, even under quarantine, they will always have opportunities to socialize, to see family members, to stay entertained, and to stave off isolation and loneliness. And I think that common theme of what assisted living communities do so very, very well is so incredibly important in this environment and every environment going forward. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to, go over them, but it's a tough time, but there's definitely some light at the end of the tunnel, and some good positive things that have been happening in communities for many, many months. What's up, Don?
Yeah, I have a comment from basically what you said. With the long lines that's been out there of people trying to get COVID tests and so on, I can't imagine somebody having their elderly parent waiting on a line someplace to get a COVID test in order to get back into the facility. That's crazy.
It is. Well, I'm not going to say, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that I would use the word crazy.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I get it. And it makes sense. And I understand where this directive is coming from. And yes, we see on the news these long lines. I get tested fairly often because I'm with elderly people all of the time. I got tested on Monday, just this past Monday. And I went for a rapid test. I was in and out in 10 minutes. So there are places that you can go. And what I also think may be something that will happen in conjunction with this, and I don't know this for sure, because this news that I just read is brand new, but potentially the assisted living communities that the residents have lived in or do live in will help assist, not in the community, of course, but they may, since they utilize their own testing and they don't have to wait on the lines, because everybody within an assisted living community has to be tested at least once a week. Perhaps there's some way that they can share that testing capacity with some of these residents outside of the community, just on the front steps or something along those lines prior to their return. I don't know if that's possible, if that's something that can be done, but it's a question that I'm going to start asking communities.
That's a good question. It's a good point. Yeah, I've seen the lines. I have heard about the lines, but when even driving past, I'm not seeing it.
Right.
So I'm sure it's just like everything else. There's going to be, I imagine that there's going to be an uptick within the next few days in regard to testing, period, because people want to be with their families and potentially are testing just before they see them, just to make sure everything's okay. But I don't want that to deter anybody to think, oh my gosh, I'll never get a test, because that is also has not been my experience as well.
Yeah, and quite frankly, one of the reasons for having this new measure come from Department of Health is to discourage people leaving communities. Just like the messages that we're seeing on the news all the time, stay home, make this Thanksgiving a smaller Thanksgiving, don't travel, don't do this. Well, these messages are coming from everywhere. And I guess they're, in the same capacity, if they can do something and send a message and create a new qualifying event within an assisted living community that will discourage people from leaving for their protection, they're going to do it, which actually they did.
Right. It's just a hard time for everybody, especially our the older adult population. But just everybody around the world. When they say we are in this together, we truly are. Like, we think about our own community, we think about our own family, because obviously that's what's touching us, but recognize that we are in this with the entire world. And this isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. And we want to keep people healthy and safe. And we want to figure out, like many of these assisted livings are doing, is to figure out ways to continue the quality of life, even with, a somewhat isolated, but to stave off the loneliness, even in isolation. So
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
tricks and ways that we can do this and that we've shared. And I thank everybody for sharing their expertise and experience with that, and so that we can utilize that with our family and loved ones and clients. So I hope this has been helpful for everyone. I want to thank Jen and Adam so much for lending their expertise today, and for all of you for participating and adding your thoughts. So if we don't have any more questions, I don't see any in the chat, but have a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful Thanksgiving. And I am very grateful for you being here, and I'm sure you have all things that you are grateful for as well. So God bless.